Hi, guys, and welcome back to the Nature of Being podcast. I'm your host, Katie.
And I'm your host, Mimi. Today, we're going to talk about the topic of, we're just going to call it, It's Not That Deep. A lot of us take our life a little too seriously, maybe plan it out too much in the future, and consequently miss out on the life right in front of us presently. So, we're going to talk about that today. We are going to start with a new segment of our podcast where we share questions or comments from our listeners. And we had a lovely response on YouTube, which was really fun to see because we kind of just post everything everywhere and then just hope that some people take to it on every platform, which has been really cool to see. We had a comment on our YouTube video from Electra. She said, "I love you guys. You are both so sweet and easy to listen to. Great topics and so many words of wisdom." Then she mentions that she is divorcing her husband after 40 years and enjoying adventures that she can now see since uh, when she's turned corners and taken her blinders off. She attended an ayahuasca ceremony in Costa Rica and felt some healing from that with the plant medicine, and which this helped her get out of the box that she was programmed to live in.
So, we thought that this comment would be kind of a perfect way to jump into this episode. We take so many things in life way too seriously. And the truth of the matter is, most of it's just not that deep. And
Not that deep.
it's really not. And one of the biggest things that kind of jumped out at me from this comment, and it's so cool to see one of our listeners, like she was in a marriage for 40 years. And for how many of those years she was unhappy, I don't know. But for her to come to the recognition that, like, holy shit, I've been in this unhappy relationship and I have not done the things that make me happy. And I've prioritized someone else's needs above my own for so long. And then for her to realize that she's been put in these boxes that we all have been put in, and we all have taken those boxes so seriously, whether that be I have to get married, or whether that be my job is my life, or whether any box that you put yourself in, and then you get stressed and you are upset if you don't fit into that box, if you sway away from like the direction of moving that way, and all of a sudden you don't allow yourself to just kind of like move fluidly through life. You're always focusing on an endpoint, and you're taking so many things so seriously that really just like don't matter. And by doing that, you're missing out on the things that do matter, which is the here and the now and the present moment. um and that's definitely something that it's cool to see that one of our listeners is starting to kind of open up her eyes and wake up after decades
A long
of,
time.
yeah, putting her not putting herself first.
It's also cool that she felt like sharing this on a public platform like YouTube. And I did ask her as well in the comment if we could talk about it today, but she said that was totally fine. So it's cool that she has shed these layers and found that she doesn't have to be in the box she was told she should be in. It's pretty cool. And we appreciate her comment and anybody who wants to leave a comment, because it's a good jumping off point for us. And it's cool to hear from our listeners about their own lives and their own experiences.
It is super cool, and it's great to just know that we're not in we're not alone in this. We're all in this together.
Yeah.
Like things that you're experiencing, maybe you are sitting at home listening to this and you have been in an unhappy marriage or an unhappy job, and realize that you're not alone in feeling that way, and that you're not crazy for thinking that leaving after 40 years, like even considering leaving after 40 years, like other people are doing it
Mm-hmm.
too. It's never too late to wake up. It's never too late to start asking the questions that you've been avoiding asking for however long in your life. And that kind of just like leads us into just talking about things that you really should be focusing on in life and things that you shouldn't, because a lot of the times we spend so much time focusing on the things that don't matter that we lose track of the things that do matter. And then you look back on the last 30, 40 years of your life and you realize that what have I been doing this for? Who have I been doing this for? Because a lot of
Mm-hmm.
the times you're not doing it for you. You're doing it all for other people.
True that. I want to flip to kind of talking about something that Katie touched on, which is just living presently versus living for your goals. Because I think we've all been told our whole life, like, have a 5-year plan, have a 10-year plan, or like, what's next for you? What are you striving for right now? So like, it's kind of pushed us into this mindset of like this hustle or grind towards whatever is next or the next big thing, which consequently takes us away from the present moment. I had a really nice conversation with a friend last night about was asking me like, how's life, like what's your like plan or whatever. And I was like, I hate when people ask me that. And we're like really close, so it wasn't like that, but we started talking about how you could die tomorrow, and then what would all of this have been for? And we were talking about people who, like planners, people who plan their life really far in advance, and they're like, by this age I want to be here, and by this age I'm going to be there. And when you kind of set your life up with like all of these like points you're supposed to meet, every time leading up to that next point, you kind of miss out on everything in between because you're just so focused on getting to that thing. Then you get to that thing, and then there's another thing. So life just keeps kind of passing you by. And we were talking about what's going on in Palestine right now and how a lot of these people didn't expect that, where they've lived would be in ruins. Like I think now 10, 12 days ago, everything was fine in that area. And now it's not, and that could be the case for anybody in different forms of that.
Yeah, no, it's kind of crazy. Like, I briefly touched on this on one of our TikToks the other day, and just kind of you never know when the end is going to happen. It's the only thing that's guaranteed in life is that you will this being, this body will be gone one day.
Yes.
And yet we spend so much of our time focusing on things that don't matter, when it's like, when you're gone, what do you really want to have accomplished? Do you want to be the CEO of this company that you don't actually care about, that they pay you millions of dollars? Or do you want to be known as someone that was caring and giving and gave up their time to do things that were more important, or have your kids remember you as being at their soccer games and bringing them places? Or do you want your family members to remember that you went to the family reunions and that you made time for the cousins' graduations? We spend so much of our time not appreciating what is right in front of us, and not appreciating the people that are in our community. And then you look at something like all the horrific things that are happening around the world, and you realize that like everything, every moment is so precious and so finite. And right here, right now, this is all that is promised to us. And I'm sure everybody that is in that situation had, like you said, they had no idea that one day everything that they once knew wouldn't be there anymore.
Yeah.
And we need to just stop taking these we spend so much time stressing over stupid, minuscule little things that don't matter, and so little time appreciating all the beautiful and magical moments that happen around us all the time. And when it comes down to the end, trust me, you're not going to remember those dumb things that you spent hours upon hours stressing about. You're going to remember the first time you fell in love. And you're going to remember the first time you held your baby in your arms. And you're going to remember the first time you hiked to the top of that insane mountain that you've always been wanting to hike to. And you're going to remember your best friend's bachelorette party that you might have gotten just a little too drunk at, but it was one of the best weekends of your life. Those are the
Yeah.
things that matter, the people, the moments, the when you feel like you are being your most authentic self and you are being present in that moment, those are the things that matter. It's not that work project that's due in a month that you're going to spend the next month ignoring all your other things just to make sure that your boss thinks that presentation is phenomenal.
Your
We
boss doesn't give a shit about you either.
no, and you're so replaceable
Yeah.
that you're not replaceable by your children. You're not replaceable by most of your friends. And that's why you look at people that are so unhappy in marriages and so unhappy in relationships. It's because a lot of the times they're not actually present in that relationship. They're not actually present in the moments that they spend with that person because their mind is always thinking about things that really just are not that important. And by doing that, they miss out on the one thing that is important. And then all of a sudden it's gone. And then you're like, wow, how did I let the most amazing thing that's ever happened to me go? And a lot of the times that's just because of you what you chose to do with your time and what you
Mhm.
chose to care about, and you cared about the things that like really aren't that deep, and then in doing that you miss out on the things that are.
Everybody has, like, if you could lay out your priorities, like if your brain could just like make a list for you for like how it really feels about their priorities, I would say like 80% of what is being prioritized as like a stressor is really not actually as deep as like you are choosing to make it, which
Absolutely.
is unfortunate.
It is unfortunate. We waste a lot of time being anxious and being stressed over the minuscule mundane things that like also are like probably out of our control. Like, I mean, being
Probably
late to something,
definitely.
like
I mean, because like you
I
said,
think
everything's out of our control. Like besides
mhm.
like the actions and that you are able to choose for yourself. Like,
Yeah, you can't choose what happens to you, but you can choose how you react to it.
yeah,
And
yeah.
you can choose whether that's going to affect the next month of your life or not. Like, you could take something that's so small and you could get over it in an instant, but if you focus on that as thinking it's so much deeper than it is, then all of a sudden you're just like you're missing out on all the opportunity of being like, "No, it's just not that deep. It's just not that deep." And then switching your focus immediately to something that is more important, or even switching your focus literally to just being and not needing to always be thinking about being somewhere that you're not.
What I've like a question for you, I guess. Like, what is something that you maybe thought was really deep and now like as your present adult self have realized like it's really not that deep? Where like you wish you
Uh,
could go back in time and be like, bitch, it's not that deep to like your younger self.
oh, probably a lot of things. I would say one of the biggest ones would be like my relationships with people, whether that be friendships or significant others. Um, I think for most of my life, I thought that all of my relationships had to be this like deep connection. It had to be this like everything, like this person is gonna, I don't know, you set a lot of expectations for who you think people are going to be.
Mhm.
And you spend a lot of time thinking like the decisions that they're making that because you did something, or you tie so much of like other people's actions to yourself and being like, oh,
Mhm.
what did I do to have them deserve to treat me that way? Or like when someone bullies you or a friend betrays you or a significant other cheats on you, you always go back to like, oh, what did I do wrong? And the fact of the matter is, a lot of the times when people do those things, it's not as deep as you think it is. It's just something that they did. And like, you have to just recognize that, like, a lot of the times that's who people are. And people don't consider other people's feelings, or they really aren't thinking about you in any way. And obviously, if you're in a relationship with someone, you would hope that they would consider your feelings in some way. But a lot of friendships with people, like, depending on how deep that friendship is, like, they really could have, like, it's not that they're trying to hurt you in what they're doing. It's just that, like, you weren't at top of mind when they made that decision. It wasn't it's not that it was this malicious thing against you. It
Mhm.
probably wasn't even that deep of a decision. It was just something that they did, and then they people don't always, like, recognize the consequences of it, and I think that that's sometimes okay. I think that it's sometimes okay to not think 20 years down the line with every decision that you make,
Mhm.
because you don't even know what's gonna happen tomorrow. So, like, sometimes I think that we make these decisions, and then we almost have to know what's when we make these decisions, like, what's gonna happen, like, how is this gonna affect every little thing in my life? And the thing is, like, just make decisions, be present, do what you wanna do in that exact moment. Don't need to have an answer for why you're doing it all the
I
time.
have like 12 things to say about,
Please go.
because you
Please
you
go.
said a lot of things at once, and I want
I
to make
did.
sure
I kind of hopped around a
I
lot.
want
I
to
don't
make
even
sure.
know
No,
I
you made
really
your
don't even
point.
know if I answered your question.
You made your point. You made your point. But there was like I just want to like say it before I forget it.
Yes, please.
Number one is it's not about you. Like most of what other people do has nothing to do with anybody else but themselves. And like I know we all hate that, like it's not you, it's me or whatever thing that
Mhm.
people say, but like it is. Like a lot of times it was never about you. Like once you realize that nothing is really about you because everybody's all like doing their own thing, stuck in their own heads, like it's all a
You start
projection
taking
of
things so
themselves.
seriously. Mhm.
Like I went like this when you were talking because I was saying like
Oh, I did see that.
projection. Yeah, like people are projecting themselves onto
Mhm.
other people all the time. And number two, when you're saying like making decisions and then how is that going to affect me 20 years down the road? I mean, like, hello, like our school systems, and I know you have strong thoughts about this, but like, what the fuck? We want 18-year-olds to decide what their major is, and then that's gonna be their job forever.
Mhm.
Like, what? And then nobody, if you like, there's probably good stats on it somewhere that I don't have the reference for, but people don't use their majors. Like, I was undeclared for 2 years because I was like, what the hell am I gonna do? I don't know. Of course, chose comm studies because that's what you do when you don't know what you want to do. Um,
Exactly.
um, and then graduated, became a personal trainer, and I'm like still doing that. Like communication studies, where marketing minor, where like I maybe I'll use it. Was it beneficial? Was college a great time? Of course, but like, what about people who chose majors like education or something where it's not as broad,
Mhm.
and then they graduate from college and they're like, I don't even like this, or I don't even want to do this. Or like,
Yeah.
I don't know.
But I mean, even like what you were just saying about, I think it's kind of cool because, like, I'm the same way. Like, I barely use my major. I use my minor more than I use my major.
What
One of
was
my
your
minors,
major?
my major was zoology, and my minors were in math and marketing. And so, marketing, I use um, zoology. I'm like kind of not really at all using it, but I now sell lab equipment to science labs. So, that it helps that I've like been in a lab before. It was really cool. And but I think that there is so much beauty in the fact that neither of us used it, because we also like didn't take our majors as being that deep. We weren't like, oh,
Yeah.
we majored in this, so we like have to do that for the rest of our lives. We were like, well, it was fun to study that for 4 years. Now what's next? Like, we
Yeah.
it's really not that deep. And so many people think like, oh, this is the only thing that can matter. This is the only thing I can do. Like, and even
Yeah.
like you said, education, where like a lot of people they then get stuck in that because they're like, well, what else do I do with this degree? And it's so much easier than we think to change the entire trajectory of your life.
Yeah.
You could wake up tomorrow and be like, no, I want to become a astronaut, say. I mean, like, might take you a while, but you could do
Hmm.
it. I could decide tomorrow that I want to become a pilot. I had a really good friend of mine just do that recently. He had graduated with his associates, and then he was doing a job working some type of like managerial position at some company. I'm honestly not really sure. But then he decided that this wasn't for him. And he'd been working this job for a while. And then randomly he decided his dad was a pilot. And he decided that he kind of wanted to like get into that. So he looked into it. And then randomly he just decided, fuck it, quit his full-time job, started picking up a bartending gig, enrolled himself into pilot school, and now has his private pilot's license and is going on to be a commercial pilot and owns his own private plane now. And you know, it's just one of those things where like he absolutely had no background in being a pilot, no background in anything having to do with that, and was just like, fuck it, I want to do this. I don't really care what I got a degree in. I don't really care what my job has been the past many years. I'm going to do what I want to do. And he just like up and changed his life, and he didn't really ask any questions, and
It's awesome.
he just did it. And I've never seen him so happy. And it's so cool to see people in your life chase after those things that they want to do, even though it's probably like, I guarantee you people probably look at anyone that changes their career and it's like, that's a really dumb decision. Like, you know, like, what are you doing? Like, are you sure? And it's like, it's not that deep. It's a job. If I hate it, it's the same thing like moving cross country or moving anywhere. You could always move back. It's not that deep. It's really not. Like, any way you can go forwards, you can go that same way backwards if you really want to later on.
Yeah, I think a lot of people allow their lives to continue to be pigeonholed. And it's really easy to let yourself stay in the box that you created for yourself versus realizing that like you're the only one who can break down the walls of that box and bust out of it. And
nobody's going to do it for you.
Yeah. And never put yourself in a box again, because you don't actually have to.
No. And that's the thing. Like, stepping away from needing the comfort of the box so you don't end up getting yourself into where you have yourself in a box, but you get yourself out of that box, but then you just like put yourself in another box. Then you like step one foot out of this box, just put yourself in it. You know, like there's so many times that we do that because we like the comfort of like knowing, being like, oh, okay, well, if I plan my 5 years out and I follow my 5-year plan, then I at least know where I'm going. And then all of a sudden a wrench gets thrown in your 5-year plan and you have no fucking clue. And you like freak out because your whole mind has been like based on that, only that one scenario happening.
I was going to mention a quote that Electra put in her little response to us, which was Wayne Dyer. You said, simply having a mind that is open to everything yet attached to nothing. But the whole time that you were saying your spiel before, like whatever you're saying before, that I responded to with the quote, the whole time my brain was like attachment, which Katie and I were talking about earlier before we hit record, which is that most everything leads back to attachment. And basically, like, we could call, if we really wanted to, every episode could be called attachment, because in some way we're talking about it. Like, I noticed episode 3 talking about truth. Well, we were also talking about attachment. And like today, we're also talking about attachment. And we were saying when you notice, or when you like realize what it is and how it affects your life, you'll notice it all the time. Just like I was when Katie was talking. I was like, oh, attachment. That's the issue there. This person's attached to an outcome. This person's attached to their 5-year plan that is inevitably going to change. And then they're upset because it didn't pan out the way they wanted it to, but they set those expectations. And it's on them to not maybe have expectations in life, because then you won't be so disappointed, which is kind of what Electra was referring to in this quote, which is be open to where life takes you, but don't be attached to where it could take you. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think tying into that is kind of like another thing that we were talking about before we hopped on this, like the idea of marriage. This might be like a little touchy subject. Sorry, mom and dad, if you're listening to this, I love you both. But the idea of you get married to someone and it's you're then attached to that person till death to us part, as so is said in 90% of vows. Um, Yet we don't, within that, we don't recognize that you're changing every single day. Your environment, their environment, everything that happens can change you, and it has the ability to like pull you in different directions. And so many people give up so much of their life to please someone else, and they allow other people to like make their decisions for you, whether that be your spouse or whether that even be like a friend or something. But within marriage, when you are saying like till death do us part, you're all of a sudden like closing off the idea that you're ever going to change almost. Like this relationship is going to be it for the rest of my life. And I'm not saying that marriage doesn't work. I absolutely think there are a lot of marriages that do work. But I also, what I noticed in a lot of those marriages that are working after 40, 50, 60 years is I see that those two people are still their own person, and
Mhm.
that they don't take everything so seriously within the relationship as like, oh, like if I do this, I have to do it in the way that my significant other won't judge. It's like they're like, I'm gonna make my decisions and like you're gonna make your decisions. And hopefully at the end of the day, we still see eye to eye. And they're also a lot of those people are very open to the idea of being like, are we both still happy? They have those conversations instead of just assuming that you're always just going to be till death do us part. This relationship's going to be perfect. And then
Yeah.
while you're both ignoring all the problems that you probably have, your relationship is falling apart. But oh, we're going to stay together because till death do us part. And I think that that's just, we're taking that way too deep. We're taking that way too seriously. We're taking the whole idea of that a little too seriously. And I think that we need to kind of step back and realize that, like, sometimes people do change. And sometimes after 40 years of marriage, you do have to leave. And that's okay. And we shouldn't be hating on people for needing that, or for hating on people for just recognizing that within themselves and doing what's best for them. Like, I think that's incredibly strong when people can do that and they can
Yeah.
step out of that and realize that this 40 years ago, yeah, it made me happy, but now I'm not happy anymore. And that's okay. It doesn't have to be this death. It's not, it's just another moment that's changing and happening. And there's going to be more moments, and there's going to be more people, and there's going to be more relationships. And it's okay if that isn't the person that you said till death do us part with.
I think that's I think that's probably my biggest issue with like the construct of marriage is like, and I don't know, I feel like it's been sold to us in media as like this beautiful like profession of love and like lifetime and like commitment, and like those things are all great. I'm not saying that isn't great. um Not like against it either. I just think people haven't thought about it enough because they've just been told this is what I'm supposed to do, so I'm going to do it. And I'm going to just, I feel like we've talked about this a lot on every episode, but it's on our hearts, I guess.
Mhm.
I think too, Katie and I are also at the age where like a lot of people our age are getting married, and there's kind of a push for it. Like there starts to be people that are like, do you want that? Have you found a man
Mhm.
yet? Or if you have a man or a woman or whatever it is, it's like, when is that going to happen? And it's like, why do we assume that has to happen?
Yeah. Like, what?
Like, we just make that assumption that that's what everybody wants and that's how it should be because everybody else has done it. And
And if you don't do it, you're somehow less
yeah,
than or less happy. And
there's something wrong with you. Like,
yeah, like you're not lovable. You're not,
yeah,
it's so bizarre to me how much pressure we put on the idea of needing to be in a relationship and get married. It just makes me so sad to see people, especially like, I mean, I'm 26. Like these people are my age, and they're already giving up so much of their freedom in their life to fit into the box of whatever their significant other wants or whatever
Mhm.
their significant other thinks they should be. And I genuinely just wish that I could just kind of like whip them on a plane and be like, okay, go on this adventure by yourself, do this alone, like do it because
Yes.
you want to do it. Just go. Like buy them a ticket and just have them just go and do it and not worry about what's going to happen when they come back, you know?
Something that I think about, because I also they're like, I always like to acknowledge like privilege too, because like obviously we don't all have the same access to do all the same things. And like, I know some people have financial obligations that like require them to like maybe hustle more or like work more or whatever.
Mhm.
Um, but I always say if you have the privilege to do something that you want, fucking do it. Like
Mhm.
if you can do something that you want to do, but you're not doing it because you think you should be in a different box.
So
Speaking
don't
of
also
which,
limit yourself to needing to thinking because you also like you see these Instagram followers and you see them go on all these sick trips and stay in these multi-million-dollar mansions and no, go hop on the cheapest, grab your Spirit flight where you can only bring a
get on that
backpack and it's
spirit flight.
$48 and you pick the cheapest Airbnb you can find, even if it, might be a little run down or you have to have, live, you're staying with the dude. Like, I mean, I've stayed in, I don't, I don't live this glamorous lifestyle. I very much travel like a dirtbag 90% of the time because it's
Mhm.
like something I want to prioritize. And like you said, like I don't have the means to go stay in the multi-million dollar mansions, but I have the means to at least like do what I can do. And if you have that ability, just go out there and experience it and not don't need it to live up to this like idealistic perfect vacation. It could literally be you eating bread and cheese, sitting on a towel on the beach in San Francisco or San Diego and watching the birds fly by, staying at your $55 a night Airbnb and
We went to Telluride
mhm,
6 weeks ago. We stayed, there were six of us, and we stayed in a tiny house. Like it was so narrow. It was like the square footage was probably I don't even know because like I wouldn't I wouldn't be able to look at a space and be like, that's how many square feet it is. But it was like so small. And it was like $100 a night or something between six people, and we stayed there 2 nights.
what
Um,
a steal.
it was a steal. And it was like such a vibe. Like there was like some farm animals because it was like on an RV, like
Okay.
RV site where like people can
Yeah.
plug in their
Yep.
RVs or whatever, and they had little
Mhm.
tiny houses on it. And it was awesome. I don't by any means live a glamorous life either, but we do with it what we can. And while you were speaking, I was like, wait a second, me and Katie want to go to Europe in May, so I was like, I'm gonna look at flights.
I
I was like,
love it. Know you so well.
fly into Barcelona on May, or no, this is April 2nd. $1,000. That's kind of a lot,
We
but
can find cheaper.
we could
Don't
find
worry.
cheaper.
I'll get
Anyways,
researching. Also,
just
that's another thing when you're traveling. I know this is a little off topic, but when you're traveling, don't just pick the first flight you see. Be very You can always find
strategic.
cheaper flights. And
Always.
if you ever need traveling advice on how to make it cheap, just slide right into our DMs and I am
Slide
happy
into
to
Katie's
help you
DMs.
guys. Yeah. Mine or
Oh
our
man.
podcast. I am happy to give you any advice you need on how the frick to just travel cheap and it's not going to be glamorous, but you will always have a blast. I can guarantee that. So,
I feel like a lot of it is like who you're with too.
yes, it
Like,
is.
travel with people
And
like
not
Katie.
and again, not having expectations for those
Yeah.
those events. Like going into it being like we're going to this new place, like a lot of times you've never experienced that place before and it doesn't need to be this mind-blowing experience. It just has to be what it is and like get excited about the fact that like it can just be that. It can just be this like really cool thing.
I just think in general, we have to think more about
Mhm.
the decisions we make in life. Um, not because like because it's not that deep, but also my point I'm trying to make is like, are you doing something because you want to do it or because you think you have to do it? That's what I
Mhm.
think people need to think about more. Because if you just thought about that a little bit longer, a little bit deeper and sat with it, you might find that a lot of what you're doing is not for yourself, it's for other people, or it's because you think you have to. And you might
Mhm.
find that some of these big life, like big points of life that we push like for people to do, um, they might not actually be what you want. You just sat with it for a little bit longer. And maybe it
Mhm.
is. And there's nothing wrong with wanting to get married. I might do that one day. Katie might do that one day. I don't know. But like all we know is right now, presently. And all we know is we're going to see where life takes us. And if it takes us there, that's great. If it doesn't, that's great too. It doesn't mean that you're weird for thinking that. It doesn't mean that you think that because of trauma in your life or something like that. Like it's just, you just feel the way that you feel and your feelings are valid. Um, just don't do shit because you think you have to. It's funny that there's like what we feel is like a timeline or that time is ticking.
Mhm.
And like time keeps passing us by, but like there's not like a deadline.
Mm-mm.
But if we tell people that there's a deadline and we sell that to them their whole lives, they will, from a place of fear, do the things
Right.
that we are telling them they need to get done by the deadline.
Mhm.
And even though I don't subscribe to the deadline, I can still feel the deadline, you know? It's almost like,
Oh,
like especially for us, like we're supposed to expire. Katie, you got 4 years, I got 6 years
fuck.
because we expire at 30.
Yep. Once you're
We
over
get
30, like,
we're not hot anymore, we're not fun, we can't wear crop tops anymore, like we're just
fuck that.
expired.
Catch me at 35 wearing the crop top.
Oh yeah. But like you can feel that and you can feel the pressure of people feeling like when are you going to get married? When are you going to have kids? Like if I'm going to want kids or when I would want them, but like I don't know.
Yeah,
Like,
and
what do you
how crazy
mean?
is it?
Like
You just grow up. We're being told to grow up so fast, and I mean, we talked about this a little bit in the last episode. Like your imagination, like we're told, to, like shut it off and like
mhm.
stop wanting more and stop like wishing and just settling into this idea of marriage and children. And we are rushed so much into that, like you said, based on this like expiration date of being like, well, you don't do it now, when are you going to do it? And I think that that's just also just so, it just sucks because so much of our potential lies in the, like right here right now, like being okay with like not knowing that. That's so much
Mhm.
of our potential is in the not knowing. And instead we want to plan out from now until we're 35, and we're taking so much of that magic and so much of that potential away because we're already deciding what our future is going to look like, and we're not just letting it authentically happen. And trust me, life isn't fun that way. It isn't fun when you have every last minute detail planned out. You Spontaneity is one of the most magical things to exist in this world, and being able to be okay with that and be okay with the not knowing is such a cool thing to do. And we need to stop telling ourselves that that this certain age that magic's going to go away. It's not. You always have that ability. There's no end to the ability of you being everything you want to be. Just because you're 30 or 35 or 40 or 50 or whatever the age limit is, you can be 65 and decide you want to become something brand new or do something crazy new that you thought that you couldn't do unless you were 25. There is no all these age limits, all these things we put on. Again, that's just another one of societal's constructs that they've convinced you is true, and it's so not.
And it's like, it's all like all of those things that they try to sell us for, like this timeline we're talking about, buying, when we buy into it, it benefits them, you know? I mean, think about how insane wedding culture is. Do you know how much it is to book a venue for like 14 hours?
Like 10 grand
Like 10
minimum.
grand. Like not
Yeah.
even exaggerating.
And those are some of the cheaper ones. Like I have a lot of friends planning
Yeah.
weddings right now, and like some can get a lot more pricing than that.
And you know how much it is to feed one person at your wedding? At least $80.
Oh yeah.
Have you
For a meal that probably costs like $4 to
I
make.
know, I was just gonna say, have you ever gone to a restaurant and like gotten a really good meal? Like your own meal yourself, not your drink, just your food. When is that ever, like who gets like an $80 steak?
No. And none of these meals you're getting at these weddings, well, obviously some that are really fancy, but none of the basic meals that cost $80 are $80. Like
No.
they're like a solid 25 at a good restaurant.
Yeah. Like if I got my main course for $25 at a restaurant, I'd be like, this is gonna be fancy.
We also need to stop taking history with people so deep. I'm sorry, you could have history with someone and they could really just not be the right one for you, regardless of if you've been with them for 20 years or 20
Yeah.
minutes. Like, you
You,
have to recognize that, like, right here, right now is a different moment than 5 years ago, 5 minutes ago. And if things have changed, and if you are not the same person you were when you got into that relationship, or they're not the same person, or your lives are different, or whatever the reason may be, you need to be able to detach from that person and recognize that, like, just because you have history with them doesn't mean they're supposed to be there for forever.
yeah. I think about this a lot with like friendships. I hear people like on social media talk about like nothing will ever be as traumatic as like my best friend that I had in high school or whatever when we like broke up.
Mhm.
And I had that exact experience, and um I think a lot of it is like you spend so much time with someone, they become your best friend, do everything together. I mean, I had so many of these instances actually. Um and it hurts because you were like friends for so long. But if you can recognize that when you guys came to the place in your life where you were no longer benefiting each other or aligning, like it's okay to like decide that this can fizzle out. And
Mhm.
I think that's how most friendships end, but I feel like everybody has that one friendship that was like it ended like a breakup.
Yeah. And at the
And that
time,
is
you
fucking traumatic.
probably thought, yeah, and at the time, you probably thought my life is over. It will never be the same. You took it
Mm-hmm.
very deep, very personal. And now you probably look back on that moment and you say to yourself, it really wasn't that deep.
No, it
And
really
at the
wasn't that deep.
but at the time, and if we kind of start to like have this mindset with things before things happen, and we start to detach, and we stop needing to everything to mean so much, and we stop needing like don't tie your value to someone else. Don't tie the fact that I am only me if I am married to this person, or I am only me if I'm friends with this person. If they leave, they're going to take a part of me. Detach from that. Detach from needing your value to be placed anywhere else. And then you'll
Yeah.
watch everything feel just a little bit lighter. And when things happen, it just won't feel as traumatic. It won't feel as though it's the end all be all, like, worst thing that's ever happened to you, because you've already taken those steps to recognize that it's just it's happening how it's meant to happen, and it doesn't need to mean more than what it is. It really doesn't need to be any deeper than what it really is right here, right now. And that's okay. And I don't it doesn't take the validity out of like your relationships. It doesn't take the validity out of your friendships. It just allows you to recognize that like you're still going to be you with
Mhm.
that person or without that person. The you are not changing just because you don't have that person in your life or because you do have that person in your life,
And
and not allowing yourself to change because of them.
you probably wouldn't feel so strongly if you hadn't attached yourself
Yeah,
so
so like tightly.
strongly to another person or thing or career.
Hmm.
Um, that's why we talk about attachment so much.
Yeah. And
Just
that's
don't do
why this,
that.
oh, that's
Don't.
why this whole episode like became a thing, because I am the queen of when people are apologizing for things that I'm like it just like blows my mind. Something so minuscule and small that I like, you can tell they're like been stressing about and like been wanting to bring up like, oh my god, I'm so sorry about this happened. I'm just like, bro, it's not that deep. And like, it's so
Yeah.
funny because I say that to people all the time and they're like, oh, I guess it isn't. And then you can genuinely see the anxiety and the stress just leave their entire body that they've been building up, and they're like, well, I never thought about it like that. Like,
I
oh, I really did think it was that deep.
that made me think of the conversation that I have often with clients when they tell me that they're not gonna like renew their contract or like they're gonna be done with training with me.
Mhm.
Because I can feel it when it's coming because I know when their contract's getting close to being done. And I
Yeah.
usually know when someone is or isn't, even if they haven't said anything. And they get this kind of look on their face and they kind of start rambling about why. And I just look at them and I'm like, and I wait for them to like finish their spiel on it. And then I'm just like, it's okay. Like, what? I didn't think you were going to train with me for the next 10 years. Maybe you would. That would be awesome. But like, I didn't, I didn't expect that. I don't set those expectations. Um,
Mm-mm.
did you learn enough that you feel comfortable going on your own? Awesome. I taught you something cool. I know we talked about this before. Um,
Yeah.
can you not do it financially anymore? Fine, I get it. I totally get that. Training is not cheap. Um, but it's funny because I'm just like, it's okay.
Yeah.
I'll still
They
follow
build
you.
up this idea that you're going to be so
Or that I'm gonna
upset.
respond like, I don't know, give them sass or something. Like,
You got to try and convince them to stay. Like,
yeah, I'm not gonna sit here and like convince you. Like you've already decided, and that's fine. Like
mhm.
I have never
And we
had a
spend so much of our life like stressing over like having those conversations with other people as though you really think that it's going to
yeah.
affect their life so much more than it
You
is.
attach to how that
And
conversation is even gonna go. And then
yeah, it's probably like we've talked about before, it's probably never going to go the way you expect it to go.
no, because it's
So
not that
just
deep.
stop having expectations. Stop thinking that much about things that really just don't matter.
I think the key things that we've kind of like hit today is like it's not that deep. Like, no,
Mhm.
seriously, it's not that deep.
It's
Um,
really
it's not about you. It's like 99% of the time, it's not about you. Like their actions, their response, their shit, like it's not about you. And like, let's be honest, like we're all in our own worlds and like we all have to be selfish to some extent. Like, do you walk around Target like psychoanalyzing everybody that walks by, judging them, every interaction you have? Like, you don't. Some people do, but that sounds like they have kind of an issue. But most people don't do that. So, like, why do you think that everybody's doing that to you? Why do you think that everybody's like doing things because of you or doesn't like you or like they're not fucking thinking about you? It's not
no,
about you.
and again, it's an ego thing. Like we take our
Yeah.
ego way too seriously. We take this idea of ourselves way too seriously, and we need to stop doing that. Like let your ego down a little bit, let it go a little bit, realize that I mean, you have problems just as much as other people has problems, and they're probably thinking if you're standing around Walmart thinking about something you have to do, they're probably thinking the same thing. They're not thinking
Yeah.
about like that random person that looks, and even like I said, your friends and your relationships, like a lot of the times, the decisions they make have nothing to do with you. It's just
Yeah.
that they're trying to prioritize themselves for sometimes the first time in their life. And in
Mm-hmm.
doing so, that might affect how like they just didn't take your feelings into consideration, and that is okay. because it wasn't like they took your feelings. I think so much of our thinking is, well, if they didn't take my feelings into account, then that means they had negative intent. No, they had no intent whatsoever. They really
Yeah.
they weren't thinking about it at all. Like it wasn't a negative, it wasn't a positive. They literally just, it didn't cross their mind. And so we need to stop thinking that that's a negative thing.
Mhm.
It's not. And it doesn't have to be. It's just, I mean, I'm going to say it 100 more times. It's just not that deep.
Not that deep. Is there any like things that aren't that deep that we like didn't touch on? Because we talked a lot about relationships and like I don't know.
I think just like everyday things, like if someone cuts, like we let so many things, small little negative things ruin our whole day. Like whether that be someone cuts you off in traffic, or someone leaves you out of a plan, or you say you live with people and your roommate puts a dish wrong in the sink, or doesn't put dishes in the dishwasher, or your dog peed on your favorite pair of jeans, like whatever it is, we take so much of that so seriously, and it ruins so much of our lives and our day because we focus on the negatives, and we make them this big deal in our head. And by doing that, and by focusing on these negative things that have already happened, you can't change them. They're in the past. You're missing out on, like we said, being present. So I think just focus
Yeah.
on something happens, it happens, and that's it. That's all it was. It was a passing moment in time. And there's going to be a bazillion more passing moments in time, and none of them you don't have to attach to any of them. You don't have to take any of them that seriously, because guess what? The next moment's already happening. So why are you taking 20 moments ago so seriously? We're already on to the next one, and on to the next already, you know?
Mm.
They happen that quick. They change that quick. And so stop thinking about them forever, and stop, like, people are driving themselves crazy for, they're spending all this time thinking about things that are out of their control, and all of it. It's
I
just,
I think there's some people that like are better at this than others, or like they've almost like just kind of been that way their whole lives, where they can just kind of brush it off, not take life too seriously, kind of roll with the punches. Like, what would we say to someone who is maybe like really type A, very much a planner, gets bothered easily by little things, like anybody who's like displaying some of those like behaviors or just ways of being? What advice like could we give them to come to a place where you're more like us, where we're like, it is what it is? Because it's not like we're like that all the time either. Like I do not spend my life thinking that everything is fine all the time, and like,
no, obviously. And I definitely think that when it comes to things like that, and when I, like, what I've been doing a lot, because like as you come to these recognitions, it's not just like this instant thing that's like forever. No, it's definitely like moments by moments, and like sometimes you slip up, and I start to notice those things now, and I'm like, oh shit, you're attaching that, blah blah blah, detach. So
yeah.
I would say, if you're someone where everything bugs you, I know it's, again, easier said than done, but take a moment to be like, tell yourself that line that I've said 100 times before. When you feel something that's starting to bug you, be like, literally convince yourself it's not that deep. Nope. I can
Yeah.
feel myself taking it too personally. I can feel it affecting me. And it's not that. It is literally a mind game. Your mind is control of everything. You can control your mind. And if you notice things are starting to get to you, and you're starting to take them more seriously, remind yourself it's not that serious. This moment will pass.
Mm-hmm.
And the only reason I'm upset about it is because I'm choosing to be upset about it. There's no
Yeah.
actual like reason I need to be upset about this, other than I told myself that in the past this has made me upset. So obviously every single time after that it has to make me upset.
I think it's like a matter of acknowledging that you are feeling the way that you're feeling and like being like, this is okay and normal that I'm feeling this way, but it's not that deep. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like, don't like
Yeah.
step over the fact that you're having an emotional response to something, or you're like upset or whatever it is, or you're taking it very seriously, or you're like, ugh. Like acknowledge that that's normal and okay. Like we are human beings, and a lot of us, like in our constructed fucking timeline of bullshit, um, it's like, does like how could we not feel that way? You know, like it's designed to make us feel
Yeah.
that way, to keep us hustling and bustling. So acknowledge that that's a normal response to that, but that it is constructed and it's not like real,
Yeah. I
you
mean,
know?
yeah.
So
And
like it's not
it
that
is
deep then.
something you've built up in your mind and it takes a while to break down those ideas that you've built up your whole life. And so don't think that this is going to be some switch you can turn on and off.
I mean, it's like our girl Electra. Like she spent so much of her life, you know, she was with her husband for 40 years. She, you know, didn't take her own needs seriously enough. She just was like conforming to the boxes she thought she had to be in until, you know, she looks like she has grandkids. You know, it took her, I would assume, somewhat recently to come to this place of like, well, damn, I don't need to be what I thought I had to be, you
Mhm.
know?
And she started taking herself a little less seriously and
Yeah.
she's starting to like see those boxes break away. And again, it takes time and it's just like life, it's going to have its ups and its downs. And there's going to be moments that you recognize all of the things and moments you let yourself get upset again. And it's just always just coming back to like questioning things. Question, why do I feel this way? What is the reason behind it? What am I attaching to? I mean, I've been recognizing how much I do that so much now that I have come to this recognition and I can see it. I can see it in my moments and I can see myself attaching to things and then I can be like, why am I doing that?
Yeah.
Okay, how can I not do that? And you start to become so aware and so one with your own mind and your own thoughts. It's so cool to be able to be like,
Yeah.
oh, I see myself doing that. And I also recognize that I don't have to be doing that. Like,
Oh
just
yeah.
let him.
I think there's a lot of power in just being aware of what's going on inside. So like recognizing, okay, why the world has been, or not why, but like how the world has been created to make me feel this way. And I'm feeling that way, but I don't need to feel that way because it's not that fucking deep, you know? Just kind of like
Mhm,
go down that line of things, and eventually you'll be able to at least rationally be like, it's not that deep. And even if you're not
mhm.
there yet, the more that you recognize those things as they come up, the more that you can kind of make peace with it, and you'll watch that like conditioning kind of settle, I would say.
Absolutely. Yeah, and you'll start to like in your own head realize that your mind starts telling you those things like, oh, it's not that deep, it's not that deep. The more and more you do it, the more and more like your mind just starts to think that for you. You don't even have to remind it. It
Yeah.
reminds you. And it's really cool. It's really cool how you can condition your brain into taking things less seriously and like relaxing, and it's very freeing. And I think it's something that we all every single person on this planet can benefit from it. And so stop taking things so seriously and
Seriously.
stop. Yeah. Just
Stop
seriously,
thinking
just
that
do
it's
it.
about you.
Yep. And just
Like there's a
let
few.
let life be what it's going to be. And
Life is not about becoming, it's just simply being,
yes. And
for real.
that's all you can do is you can be and stop thinking about everything else. Just
Don't think. No think.
don't think, never think again. Just kidding. No. Think, but be don't think too hard. Don't take things too seriously. And especially just don't attach to things. The less you attach, the less serious everything becomes because if you're not attached to it, it's not this deep thing to
Simply
think
have a
about.
mind.
Like they're all it's all together. It all flows together.
Simply have a mind that is open to everything yet attached to nothing.
Yes.
Okay, a few things before we dip. On Spotify, I would assume you can do the same thing on Apple, or maybe it like goes to both. I don't know how it works. If you guys would like to, you can give us a rating and a review. So you can click obviously 5 stars, but whatever star you think is appropriate.
We're not attached to that.
We're not attached to your 5
so if you want to
stars.
shoot us a 1, we support your decision, whatever it is. It's not that deep.
But then give us a little comment too if you would like to.
Mm-hmm. We would love to hear.
We would love to hear that. And it's very easy if you just go on our podcast. Again, I live on Spotify. I don't know how the Apple stuff works.
Neither. I can't speak.
But there should be a little star that you can click, I think, in like the top-ish left corner. You click that, you click 5 if you want to, you type your little ditty, you click submit, it's good to go. So do that if you could or would like to. And then just in general, we're going to be starting to share comments and questions at the beginning of our episodes as kind of being our jumping off point. So whether you put that in there or you shoot us a DM or you comment on our YouTube or whatever it is, or on TikTok, we probably have some on TikTok too we could use. Please do, because we want this to be like a cohesive community where we communicate and like we want to talk about things that you want to hear. We want to, like whatever's going on in your life, if you feel like it's relevant and you want us to talk about it, whatever, we would love that. So yeah, we're going to start reminding you to do those things at the end of every episode. And all of our social media, YouTube, Instagram, Spotify, TikTok is all at Nature of Being Pod. And yeah.
Those are thanks so much for joining us again.
Thank you.
This is a long one, and I know we jump back and forth, but
Katie and I had a lot of coffee before this episode and throughout this episode, and we had the giggles in the beginning. So if you watch the YouTube, you might see me like holding back laughter in the beginning. It's not because what we were talking about is funny.
It's just existence. It's kind of funny sometimes.
It's just kind of funny sometimes. So
but thank you all, and tune in another month for episode 5. Who knows what we'll be talking about then?
Who knows? We'll see where life takes us.
Yes, we will.
Okay, bye.
Bye, guys.